Welcome back to week 4, our final week of True Story. I'm just going to jump right into it because today we are talking about how because we know who God is, we can take risks for others. And I think this is a great way to wrap up this series because if you think about it, you need to trust yourself and trust who you are to take a risk. And oftentimes, a risk might require doing something difficult because a risk is a risk because it doesn't feel safe. Finally, when you take a risk, you're having to actively embrace the unknown and actively step into a space that you don't know how it's going to go. You don't know what's going to happen, and trust God in that space. And so through this series, we've been talking about how because of who God is, we can do all those things. Therefore, because of who God is, we can take risks for others. So a way that you guys have probably taken a risk for someone else and be thinking kind of about what that might look like for you is simply by just looking for maybe someone who you know is new or you know doesn't have a lot of friends and inviting them into your friend group, inviting them to hang out with you, you're inviting them to eat lunch with you. I know you guys are going to roll your eyes, but this is something that I try to do a lot, especially just because I've moved around a lot and because I know what it's like to be the new kid. So when I think about what it means for me to take risks for other people, it is like reaching out and inviting other people into a safer space, into a space where they are loved. And that's a risk because we still face that feeling of possibly being rejected. Those people could say no, right? And that's a bummer, and that's kind of scary to be rejected. However, it's about taking a risk for the good of someone else. And so someone in the Bible that's a really great example of taking a risk for someone else is Esther. And so we're going to be talking about the book of Esther today. And so just to kind of give you a brief overview of Esther, basically the book of Esther is about Esther and her cousin Mordecai. And they are living in Persia in a town called Susa. And basically the king of Persia is looking for a new queen. And so he basically just brings in a bunch of different women and just picks one. And he picks Esther. And so Esther is forced now, against her will, to marry the king of Persia and become the queen of Persia. So Esther and Mordecai are Jewish. And so Persia is not a kingdom where everybody knows God. Actually, the Jewish people were in the minority and were not well liked. And so one of the king's officials comes in and tells the king that the Jewish people need to be put to death because they are not worshiping the king or that official. And so Esther, being Jewish, has not told her husband, the king, that she is Jewish and knows that this is really, really bad. And so Mordecai and Esther kind of realize that Esther's in this position of power because of God and his plan. And so she has a lot of ability and influence over the king, obviously being his wife, to be able to help rescue the Jewish people and save them from being executed. And so this was a huge risk, obviously, for Esther because she's having to kind of step up, tell this king that she's Jewish, and either it goes great and the king realizes that Jewish people are people and not something that needs to be removed from society, or he decides to kill her along with all of those people. And so what we can learn from this is that God never gives up on his people. He's always working. He always has perfect timing, and that he uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And so as we read through Esther, we need to be asking ourselves what it means for us. And so it means that we can trust God because he will never leave us without help. We can trust him because he's working even when a situation seems scarier, bigger, and out of control than what we can handle. And we need to remember that we are often called by God to do risky things and that we can be used by God to rescue others. And so I'm going to read Esther 4:14, which says, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." So here Mordecai is reminding Esther that she has been put in this position by God, and that it is God given, and that God has a plan in this situation, because she has so much influence, and that she can show that she is Jewish to the king and prove it and show that they're people and that not something that needs to be removed or killed. And so, like Esther, you were created by a God who is good, who is always working behind the scenes to protect and rescue God's people. You are called and can be used by your Creator to protect and rescue and love others, even if sometimes it is risky. And that if you ever have the opportunity to do something risky for God or for others, remember that because who your Creator is, you can live for a purpose that's bigger than what you can imagine, that's bigger than yourself. Because of who God is, we can take risks for others. And so in the same way, you don't need a special invitation from God to step into this place of taking a risk for others. Because what we've talked about is how when you get to know God better and better understand what God wants from you, you can better love like you have been loved. So as we study God's character and as we look about more who he is and look more of how he loves people, we can replicate that better in our own lives. And in the same way, as we understand what God values, we don't need God to tell us what and exactly when or how to do something, because we already know who he loves and how he loves and can replicate that in our own lives every day. So remember that God is going to work with or without you, but you have the choice to get involved. And that you were created for such a time as this. And that references back to that verse 14 when Mordecai is reminding Esther that she was created for such a time as this. And so it might be risky, but know that you are not alone and you're not without help. So my prayer for you is that you would know God, and because you know God and you know and trust how he has made you, you can do difficult things, you can embrace the unknown, and you can take risks for others. So know that you can do these things because your Creator is good, and that because of who God is, you can take risks for others. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope to see you soon. Happy Thanksgiving, or I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Anyway, I hope to see you soon. See you guys.